Just before I started recording, it occurred to me that I'm sure a lot of you think I spend all my time on Instagram. And that's because recently, most of the episodes that I have recorded have started off with me saying, a while ago, while I was chilling on the gram, I came across ABCD and 123. And then I want to riff off of that. So, this just to let you guys know that I actually don't spend a lot of time on Instagram. Mostly when I'm there, it's to update and then respond to DMs or any engagement. However, be that as it may, today I was chilling on Instagram and then I did find something interesting that I figured that we ought to riff about and is going to be relevant to those of us here on the podcast since more than half of the people that listen to this show, at least according to the uh, what's it called? The metrics that I have so far, more than half of the listeners of this show are female. And the post that I saw was making a case about why every lady needs an F off fund. F, okay. I'm trying not to use any expletives since this is a family friendly show. But anyway, as we go on, I'm sure you guys will understand what I mean when we say the F off fund. So, first off, to try and define what is an F off fund, for people of my age, for those people who are late 70s and early 80s children, there used to be the concept of Vex money. That's back when we were kids, maybe like teenagers. And the idea behind Vex money was if you and your crew were heading out and you guys were relying on someone else. So let's say uh, you guys at secondary school, you're getting ready. Let's say Atlantic Hall is throwing a party, or maybe King's College is throwing a party, or something like that. And somebody has taken his popsy's car. So there are like eight of you who are going to ride in that car. Um, Basically, the whole idea was you can't just rely on whoever it is that owns the car because anything can happen. Because Kunle can say, "Don't worry, I've got it sorted. I'm taking Popsy's car. You guys just chill for me. I'll bring it." And then Kunle doesn't show up with the car. So what do you do? If you have Vex money, then that means you're going to be able to make your own transportation and get to the party, and so you can have fun. Or sometimes Kunle is able to get the car, and you guys get to the venue. But then maybe Kunle sees a couple of chicks, five or six that he wants to roll with. And so by the time Kunle and the chicks get into the car and one or two other guys, then you're left stranded. If you didn't bring any money, you're on your own. But if you got Vex money, then it means you'll be able to bike back or take a bus back or maybe cab back if it's late at night. And so that was the whole. So you could say that the FR fund is similar to this whole idea of Vex money. You need emergency rations or you need contingency funds because things don't always work according to plan. And so the person who made that Instagram post basically was saying that all ladies need an F off fund. You need Vex money, you need contingency rations, you need emergency funds because not everything is going to work according to plan. Unfortunately, the argument that the person was making was that um, the argument that the person was making is that the traditional protections that were there, or the traditional accommodations that were there for women, for our mothers, our wives, and our sisters, don't quite hold anymore. So spouses don't often live up to their responsibilities. What else? Things are dicey with lots of poverty in the land. Family, they have their own kind of issues. And so we find that people are having to be independent at an earlier age. Okay, maybe not independent per se, but you're expected to have a certain amount of hustle or grit for your own and not expect your spouse or your family to plug up the gap. Or rather, let me say your husband or your family to plug up the gap, since the person who made this post was talking exclusively to women. So it's stuff that I don't like to talk about necessarily, but it's a pity that it has come to this that we actually do have to address these sorts of issues, with wives and daughters having to make contingency funds when it comes to planning their day-to-day or managing the home or whatever it is. So I guess these are things that we have to talk about. I guess it's just the reality. The whole ideal or the whole idyllic representation of the family and the home, I guess that doesn't exist anymore. Although some people say it never existed in the first place. Anyway, so beyond whether this whole idea of traditional protections are gone for a woman and for the female child, there is this plus that all these narratives around self-affirmation and empowerment are actually more healthy and conducive for growth, and actually are the kinds of ideas that I would like our daughters, our wives, and our mothers, of course, to be exposed to. So, yeah. So that's the idea behind an FR fund, basically, that nothing is guaranteed, and you shouldn't be relying on your family or your husband. So you need to have some emergency rations, and you need to have some contingency funds set aside. Now, is that what I am advocating for on the podcast? By all means, the answer is no. I am not advocating that, because I am not advocating for breakdown in communications between spouses, and then people having hiding money and having secrets accounts and stuff like that. That is beyond the scope of what I set up the podcast to address in the first place. But however, let's assume that you are one of these people who wants to argue for the FR fund, and that it is absolutely necessary for every single woman to have Vex money and to have an FR fund. So let's say you're one of these people who wants to make that argument. I'm neither pitching a tent here nor there. I guess all I'm saying here today is that, well, the things that we talk about over here on the podcast, personal sales training, stuff like that, it can help. Because at the end of the day, when we talk about emergency rations, contingency funds, Vex money, and FR fund, what are we talking about? At the root of it, we're talking about fund acquisition, because you're trying to stash some money aside. And then we're also talking about personal growth, because you do have to achieve a certain measure of personal growth and comfort and credibility when it comes to these things. Talking to strangers, figuring out your value proposition, trying to communicate value, trying to close the sale, trying to get people to come back, repeat business, or bring their friends and their family. So if you're one of those people who are in the FR fund tent, the Vex money tent, then stuff that we discuss here are going to be very useful to you. And so, with this long introduction done, I guess I have queued you guys up, or at least I hope I've been able to queue you guys up to what we're going to be talking about in the next couple of episodes. Hopefully we're going to be able to get this done in maybe 2 or 3 recordings. Now, is this talk relevant to you? Because some of you guys listening to the podcast might be like, what's this guy on about? Is he advocating for the breakdown of the family? Is he saying that our wives or our girlfriends or our daughters, should keep secret funds? That is not what I'm trying to say. And actually, it is relevant to you whether you know it or not. Because for some of us, our sisters, our mothers, our aunties, our in-laws have been in situations where these traditional protections didn't work, and they didn't have the FR fund, or they did have the FR fund, and it's something that would have come in handy, or maybe did come in handy when they had. So if you're a guy listening to this podcast now and you think that what I'm talking about is just a bunch of BS, I get where you're coming from. But the thing is, by the time you talk to the female folks a little bit more, you talk to your mom, you talk to your aunties, you'll find out that for some of us, there are personal histories that we didn't know. And we're going to have daughters one day who are going to be married to men whose character and nature that we do not necessarily know. Of course, we hope for the best and we pray for the best, that our daughters will find absolute gems in husbands. So it is our prayer. But the thing is, as you talk to folks a lot more, in my own case, like one of my cousins she's turning 50 in June. So, me and the cousins, we're all getting older. Our parents are getting older. So we're at that stage of life where we're talking about stuff, like, oh, when you kids were young, this and this is what happened. I go to visit some of my aunties, like one of my aunts in Makudi. Makudi is in Benue State. And then we're talking about how when they were young, mistakes that she thinks she made, stuff that she thinks my mom did better, and stuff like that. So you might think that this conversation of the FR fund does not apply to you because you're a guy and you think it's BS. And we're saying that the family should fall apart. But actually, if you talk around to your folks, you see that there's a lot of personal and family history that we're not privy to. And there's lots of stuff in the future that I guess we have to guard against. So it's unfortunate, but yeah, we do have to talk about these things. So, the future podcast, the next 2 or 3, hopefully, so I don't stretch these sorts of things too long, because I think maybe I'm pushing the limits about things that we talk about here on the podcast. So in the next 2 or 3 recordings, we should be able to wrap up everything that has to do with this whole point of the FL fund. But remember that the angle that we're going to be coming at through it is that if you are someone who believes in Vex Money and the FL fund, then we're looking about how sales training and personal sales and networking and all these things can help you with fund acquisition and can help you with personal growth. So thank you very much for listening to the Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry podcast. I'm your host, Abuja-based sales consultant and event media professional, Tabishima Ayede. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I'll catch you guys at the next recording, where we will be discussing the re-baptism, or rather the rediscovery of this idea, which is nowadays, so it seems, called the FL Fund. I guess this is rebirth of the Vex Money Fund. So thanks, guys. I'll catch you guys at the next recording.